topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Barry G. Fowler, EA, brings you Tax Talk for You right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. As an enrolled agent and a national leader in tax resolution, as well as trucker, bookkeeping, and tax planning with over 30 years of experience, Barry will break down taxes, bookkeeping, tax planning, and tax relief for individuals and businesses just like you. So let's have some Tax Talk for You with your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, good morning and welcome. It's a great way to start the week off talking taxes, tax problems, how to resolve those problems. We got about 3 weeks to filing deadline of October 15th. So grab yourself a nice cup of coffee. It's a great way to start the morning, sit back and enjoy the show. And if you got questions, by all means, let's get them in. We'll answer those questions. We're going to talk about tax problems and stuff, but tax problems weren't always around until we actually got the modern tax code. And I mean modern tax code, meaning the tax code that actually was the foundation for the codes that we're in now. Because here in the United States, or when we were a colony, we had taxes. And before the American Revolution, we had taxes imposed by Great Britain, such as the Stamp Act of 1765 and the Townshend Acts of 1767. And these levied taxes and left the colonists without any consent, and were a major cause of the American Revolution. And then post-revolution, with the country's founding, the federal government was mainly funded through tariffs. Imagine that. And tariffs were on imports and excise taxes on specific products such as whiskey. States and localities collected property taxes and excise tax again on whiskey. And it also led to the whiskey revolution. So you can see people fought over taxes. It's the Civil War. This is probably the first time that there was a federal income tax. And that was back in 1862 to help fund the Civil War. At that time, President Abraham Lincoln signed into law the first federal income tax. And it taxed incomes above $600. And it was at a whopping rate of 3%. We could all live with a 3% tax rate, I think. Wouldn't that be nice to go back to that? However, people don't like taxes. So that did get repealed in 1872. And I like history, so it's really kind of cool to look back and see the history and then the history of the, so to say, modern income tax. In 1895, there was an attempt to reestablish an income tax, but the Supreme Court actually ruled it unconstitutional, saying that it was a direct tax that had to be apportioned among the states by population. However, in 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified, giving Congress the legal authority to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states. Yeah, we let congressmen get involved, and then we let the constitutional amendment that got ratified by all the states to collect the dreaded income tax that we have to live with, sort of say, now. And that brought upon the 1913 Revenue Act. And, Following the ratification of that 16th Amendment, Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1913, officially establishing the modern federal income tax system. Initially, less than 1% of the population paid the tax. So, it's kind of amazing, you think about it. And, we went from 1% of the population paying the tax to a higher percentage, and I say roughly 50%. But, that tax at that time really wasn't that high, and it was really low. And then the tax rates continued to increase over time because, as I would say, American government got greedy. American government decided they could redistribute wealth. American government decided that they could take from others and do what they wanted to do with other people's money. And so therefore they collect more and more money from you and I. And then it led to Great Depression, which then led to saying we needed a safety net, not the safety net of churches and family, but a safety net from the government called Social Security. Wasn't meant to be the be all end all retirement. It was mainly meant to be there as a safety net if something was to happen, like the Great Depression. So, they have managed to always find ways to take money, do things with this money. And then they decided that they could then put the government into debt and build that debt continually for you, I, our grandkids, our great grandkids. And it's time to put our foot down and get back to a balanced budget, pay this debt back, and let the country live on what it collects, not live off the backs of future generations. Yes, this is my soapbox today. Yes, I truly believe that we need to get back to living off of what the government collects, balance the budget, and get back to actually doing a budget, line item by line item, so that you and I and every American could look at a bill and decide, hey, is this right? Things that we've seen through Doge and stuff that are recovering, millions of dollars is just a small piece of what's going on in this government and what they give away and what they do and the deficits that we run. Can't continue to run a deficit forever. If you took and put these numbers into your and my budget and we were running that kind of deficit on a smaller scale, on our smaller numbers in our household, you would be bankrupt in no time at all. You couldn't afford to continue to live having that deficit year after year after year and paying the interest on the notes that would be coming due, not to mention the notes that are have to be paid off, not to mention the Social Security that has to be paid to you and I and others in the future because of what we have paid in. Yes, I have some great comments here. Seems like the American government takes liberties with our money. It does. It plays fast and loose, not just our money, but future money. Does the government know how to manage money? No. Nobody ever said the government knew how to manage money. Congressmen want to stay in office. You want to solve problems? I think the first thing you do is you put every congressman, every senator, and every person that works in the federal government into the same system we are, Social Security, same health care that we've got to buy through the marketplace or whatever. They shouldn't be on their own system. They should be on the very system that we are on. They're no better than you and I. There should not be a retirement when you leave Congress. You should be able to go back into the workforce and go work. Same with any other federal government position. Put them on Social Security. If it's good for you, it's good for them. As my grandfather used to say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And let's make it true in the United States. But that takes you and I getting out and voting and insisting that this happens. If term limits are good for the president, term limits should be good for congressmen. You should go back to this is what we did doing our civil duty to serve for this government, not to be there all the time, not to make a ungodly amount of money, but to serve and then get back to my community and work within the community and do the things that we need to do, not to be feeding off the federal government all your life. We can preach, we can talk, we can do everything, but it takes action. And it takes action from every American, not just some Americans. Thomas Jefferson, I believe, is the one, or maybe it was Benjamin Franklin, that once said, once Americans figure out they can vote themselves a raise or vote themselves money, it's going to be the end of the republic as it is. Stop trying to vote yourself money or somebody else money. Let the churches be the ones that help people. Help your neighbor. Help your family. Should be within, not within the government. Hey, I promise today what we're going to talk about is how to resolve your IRS problems. Now we know where the IRS problems come from. Government needs money. Government wants money. Government's got to have money to survive. Government's got to pay this, got to pay that. Now, how do they do it? It's collecting from you and I and everybody else. Hey, if you owe the IRS money, there are solutions to solve your tax problems. And don't let an IRS agent say you don't need representation. And we're going to talk about your solutions to IRS problems right after this.
We have only scratched the surface of today's show. Please stand by as Barry G. Fowler will be right back with Tax Talk for You. If you owe the IRS or are going through an IRS audit, don't go at it alone. Call Taxation Solutions Tax Relief at 888-930-1016. We are your solution for IRS debts, audits, back taxes, garnishments, liens, and levies. Whether you're an individual or business, you need a solution and a strong, aggressive tax resolution. Don't let the IRS walk all over you. Stop the IRS now. Call 888-930-1016 or go to taxationsolutions.net now for a free, no obligation consultation. Let's get back to Tax Talk for You with more Tax Talk. Once again, here's your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, welcome back. The first segment we were talking about the beginning tax code. I find some things to be really amazing. And we had bought a gentleman's practice many years ago. And one of the things that we were cleaning out filing cabinets and cleaning things out. And I actually found a tax return from 1918 that was filed. And actually, this one was actually kind of interesting because of how much money they made and what they were doing. So it was really cool. When my father passed away a few years ago, I was going through his records and found my grandfather's early returns from the 1930s. So that was really cool to be able to look at and see, what the tax code was then and how they did taxes. I mean, when we first started doing taxes, it was pencil and paper. And way back then, some of these were actually done on a typewriter. So, it was kind of cool and kind of interesting seeing some of the returns that were filed. Amazed that somebody would actually do a tax return, typed. But, there it was. Most of the returns we see from the old days were handwritten. And, my dad still had records from the 60s and the 70s when he was doing his own returns, even though he was a CPA and knew that he didn't have to keep records back that far. It was kind of cool to see the records that my dad had of his returns and my mom's returns back when they were first married and everything. So they didn't have any tax problems, which is, thank God. If you have a tax problem, it's not the end of the world. It only feels like it. The weight of the federal government, the weight of not knowing what is going to happen today, tomorrow, the next day, or Friday, or the day you get paid, can be devastating in your family. I mean, if you're married, your husband should be taking care of this. You as a wife, if he's not going to take care of it, then you do. Somebody needs to step up and deal with the problem to get the IRS off your back, because the weight of it is going to break the marriage. The weight of it is going to continue to add stress between you and your spouse, with your kids, with your family. And it's stress that it can become overwhelming. We've heard it from people. We hear it in their voices. We hear it when we're talking to them. We can hear the fear and the anxiety that goes along with this, because you don't know what's going to be next. So, where we start to resolve a tax problem is we first need to identify the issue or issues that are causing the problem, cause the problem, are the problem. And so we sit down and we do a complete tax analysis. And it's where we go through and we look at what returns need to be filed. What returns were filed? Did you go through an audit? If you went through the audit, was the audit done right? Did you guys get the opportunity, or did you provide the support for that audit? Did you file the returns, or did somebody file those returns correctly? Or were they just filed incorrectly and they can be corrected and lower the balance down? Is the statute of limitations running? And are they going to run out soon? So every year, every tax debt has a statute of limitations. And it's 10 years from when that return is accepted and filed, or the tax is assessed. So if you didn't file a return, it may be 3 years later and the IRS did an SFR, substitute for return. Well, 3 years later, that's when the statute started running. But the IRS, when they do a substitute for a return, does not do it in your favor, doesn't do it with all of the deductions that you should have or deserve, or you have. And so maybe we need to go back and file the actual return. But maybe the substitute for return was filed and we're close to that 10-year statute of limitations, and the time's going to run out. Why restart it for something? Let it run out and be done with it. We look at all that. We analyze all that so that you and I will be able to sit down and have a very good conversation about your tax debt and what it's going to require to solve this tax debt. Now, people say, the first thing you need to do is identify the problem and the issue and then contact the IRS. And it's all good and perfect. If you want to do that, great. And it says contact them immediately, and especially if you're actually doing and asking a question at AI, or whoever on your phone that's going to do this internet search for you. It says identify the problem and then contact the IRS. Well, the IRS is going to only talk about a payment plan with you. How much can you afford to pay? How much do you have in your bank account? And sometimes those are just questions that these guys are going to ask to determine how much money they're going to get from you today and then in payments in the future, even if you can't afford it. But you need to explore all your options. You need to explore everything that's going on first. Maybe we do the tax analysis and we come back and it's really simple. We're going to explain to you should do this, this, and this. Do these 3 steps, resolve your tax problem, and then you can get back to living your life and be done. But if it's major, maybe you've got to do these 3 or 4 steps, and we'll be able to get it whittled down a little bit, but then make a decision together how you can resolve this tax problem. See, because you got a tax problem, and maybe it's a result of unfiled tax returns. So maybe you haven't filed 3, 4, 5, 7 years of taxes. Well, the IRS is going to ask for at least the last 6. You may want to do 7 or 8 because you don't want them to file substitute for returns. Maybe there wasn't any reason to file, so we can just get them filed and be done. Maybe we can fix returns that are on SFR substitute. Maybe we need to file amended returns and fix returns that were done improperly. Maybe you're a truck driver out there and you had somebody doing taxes for you that knows nothing about trucking, and they missed a lot of deductions. And it could be somebody you trust. And we dealt with somebody that was coming with us, and they didn't want to give us returns from their CPA who was preparing them. But they finally gave us some information. And the first thing we did is we noticed that the Schedule C was done completely wrong. They doubted us and decided they weren't going to use us, but we explained to them, hey, this guy just has no clue what he's doing for truckers. And that really happens. Hey, that's the way life is. If you trust them, that's fine. But if it's completely wrong, you want to get it fixed. You want to do it right. So it's the same thing we do in here. When we're resolving these tax problems, we're looking for ways to make your liability the right amount and then find ways to resolve them after that part is taken care of. So again, that first step is to do the tax analysis. And that is review everything, look at everything that's going on, categorize it based on, hey, this is the statute of limitations that's going to run out. This is maybe an audit that happened, or these are the returns that need to be done. These are the returns that we need to look at to make sure they were done correctly. Or, is there something we need to fix, good, bad, or indifferent, so that we don't have problems in the future? And then determine now your actual liability to the IRS and determine your financial ability to pay or not cover what the IRS is saying that you owe. So you get started in that tax problems and you get into solving tax resolution. And that is the name of the game, is getting things done the right way, in the right timing, to finally put a solution in place that's going to save you money today, tomorrow, and the future. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk about all the other steps that you need to take to resolve your tax problem. And we're going to do that right after this.
We have only scratched the surface of today's show. Please stand by, as Barry G. Fowler will be right back with Tax Talk for you. As an owner-operator, you already spend too much time away from your family. Trucker Tax Tools handles all your bookkeeping and taxes, no matter what level trucker you are. Life on the road can be taxing, but that doesn't mean that your wallet or time with your family should suffer. Trucker Tax Tools makes your life run smoothly. Go to truckertaxtools.com for a free guide that will give you the tools to never worry about your taxes again. Call Trucker Tax Tools at 877-966-2477 or go to truckertaxtools.com now and let the experts keep you trucking. Let's get back to Tax Talk for You with more Tax Talk. Once again, here's your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, welcome back. Talking about tax problems, tax issues, solving your tax problems. If you do have a tax problem and you're desiring help, you give us a call at 888-930-1016. Again, 888-930-1016. And, we can work with you and help you through your tax problem. It's a free call. There's no obligation, free consultation. You're going to call into the office and talk to one of my assistants, and then you'll move over and talk to one of our enrolled agents. Likely it's going to be me, because I like to get involved right from the beginning with our clients or future clients and help you make a decision. What's the best way to go? Whether you use us or not, or whether you use somebody else, you need to get the help that you need going forward to resolve the problem. Now, what I tell you is that, hey, you got to watch out, because there are a lot of unscrupulous people in this industry who will tell you what you want to hear. And they'll tell you right off the bat that, hey, we can get you an offering compromise. You may qualify for offering compromise, possibly qualify for offering compromise, but all you really heard was offering compromise, settling this for less than what you owe, and you say yes, and you sign up with them. Then you find out that that's not your solution, or that's not true, or there's all these other things you've got to do and pay for still. You need to do something that's going to be step by step, completely guided. And you want to see kind of what we do. There is a book that I wrote that's online. It's called the IRS Playbook.info. Again, IRSplaybook.info. It's complete information, but it's our 3 simple steps that we take to resolve your tax problems. And I've been using this method for the last 30 years to resolve tax problems for individuals and businesses all across the country. People that owe the IRS, anywhere from $10,000 to millions of dollars we've dealt with to resolve tax problems. Now, there are several ways that solutions can be put in place. Now, what I say is that first solution may be correcting all the tax returns that were filed incorrectly, and maybe that lowers the liability down to something you can afford or handle, or gets rid of it altogether. I've seen that happen. Maybe you've gone through an audit and it's completely just an audit reconsideration, and we can win that, and the debt can go away. And that's really some nice ways of seeing debt fall off or go away. You've got to sit down and talk with somebody and make it make sense, and then make it work for you and your family to put the right solution and resolution to your problem. Now, if you call the IRS, the first thing they're going to do is potentially give you the option to full pay. So if you can afford it, hey, full pay it. It stops interest, it stops penalties. Get it off your back. Go make the payment. Get it done. The interest rates and the penalties is more than what you're going to earn by keeping that money as an investment and stuff. Take it, pay it off, be done with it. Then you don't have to deal with anybody doing resolution for you. You don't have to deal with a solution or a payment plan or anything else. Debt's done, penalties stop. Now, make sure that every year from that point going forward, you stay in compliance, paying the income tax. Doesn't mean you got to pay an absorbent amount of tax, what you need to do is work with somebody that's going to make sure that you are getting every deduction possible for yourself, your business, personally, and you're taking advantage of all the tax credits that are out there to lower your liability down to the lowest amount allowed by law, and pay the least amount. That's what your goal should always be. Judge William Rehnquist said there was nothing ever a problem. He was a Supreme Court justice many years ago. Matter of fact, he was the Chief Justice. And, him saying that meant that there was nothing in the law that prevented you from doing tax planning and planning to avoid tax at, all costs, and using the tax code to your advantage. What do you think the tax code is there for? Well, it's government guidance to collect as much money as possible, but it's also your guidance to find every single deduction that you can have that's allowed by law. And that's what people like myself and other enrolled agents do, is we specialize in taxes, trying to lower what you're going to pay legally within the system and using the tax code to your advantage. What do you think every president, whatever you think every senator and congressman do? What do you think every billionaire or millionaire does? They use the tax code 100% to their benefit, getting the write-offs at the right time, at the right place, to lower their taxes down to the lowest amount allowed by law. The one big beautiful bill gives you several advantages for 2025, 2026, and going forward in the future. And you've got to use those things that are in that bill to your advantage, whether you are in business as a trucker, whether you're in a business in consulting or retail, manufacturing, whatever line of business that you're in, use it to your advantage. You as an individual taxpayer, there are things in this bill you can use to your advantage as well. You need to use it to lower the amount you're going to pay in taxes, so that if you ever do have money that you're going to owe, you can afford to pay it, hopefully. But that being said, you've got to stay in compliance and do the things to prevent penalties, because penalties get costly. Now, we've determined how much money you can't afford to pay it. What are your options? Well, your first option is an installment agreement. It allows you to make monthly payments up to 72 months. The online payment application is good for you if you want. You go to irs.gov, go to payments, and set up an installment agreement. And if you owe less than $50,000, there's some other concerns and stuff in there, but you could go on there and set up the installment agreement yourself. They will give you the option how much you're going to pay, and it's a full pay option, nothing else. So they're going to give you up to 72 months to do. Now, maybe you're looking at taking a second mortgage or something, and you just need time to get the mortgage done to pay off the tax debt, or get a loan. The IRS does allow you to do 180-day full pay hold, which means in 180 days you plan on full paying, and you can put that through online, or you can call the IRS, sit on hold for about 3 hours, and do that as well. Don't really recommend doing that unless you truly are going to full pay. Sometimes if you're working with a representative, we need some time to gather documents and do things and move it in the right direction to get the right plan in place for you, so those holds become invaluable to us while we're representing. And we don't use that full 180 days. We'll maybe use 30 or 60 days here and there, just to get us to that point to where we have the solution ready to go. Now, you can't afford to pay So what are your other options now? So they have when you go in, you calculate it, it says, hey, you're going to pay $1,000 a month to pay this tax debt over the next 72 months. And you go, oh, my budget just doesn't have that in there. What am I going to do now? We can possibly do a partial pay installment agreement. So, if you've got assets, the IRS is going to look at the value of those assets. If we went any other route, they're going to look at your income and your actual expenses and what's allowable and what's not. And then they will come back and say, we'll agree on this number here. And what we've got to do is fill out the forms 433A in detail. We also fill out a 433F, so it's less detail as well if we're, depending on the status we're trying to get into. And then if you're running a business or own a business, you will probably have to add the 433B with it as well. Now, we'll look at all those things and see how we're going to address these things. And what other options do you have that's available to you to solve your IRS problem? And we'll do that right after this quick break.
We have only scratched the surface of today's show. Please stand by as Barry G. Fowler will be right back with Tax Talk for You. As an owner-operator, you already spend too much time away from your family. Stop spending time doing paperwork. Go to truckertaxtools.com, a solution built specifically for truckers. Truckertaxtools.com makes your life run smoothly. Let's get back to Tax Talk for You with more Tax Talk. Once again, here's your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Well, welcome back. Talking about your IRS problems and settling those problems and getting a solution put in place. Realistically, what you've got is 4 options out there. Again, it's the installment agreement, full pay. You're going to pay it up to 72 months and pay all the interest and penalties and everything back to the IRS over those 72 months. Then there's also the partial pay installment agreement. There's also what everybody hears, and you hear in the commercials, the offers in compromise, where it's an agreement to settle your tax debt for less than the full amount you owe. And then the other option is currently non-collectible. Now I'm going to talk about these things as we go, and I'm going to go backwards on this. Well, currently non-collectible is a status where the IRS determines that you can't pay anything on your tax debt due to financial hardship. It does delay collection activities. It does get reviewed usually in 2 years unless your income hasn't changed. We use it for people that don't see that their income's ever going to change. Maybe you're on Social Security and that's all you have. Maybe you're on disability and you're not seeing any other money coming in and you owe a lot of back taxes. This is a solution that will let the statute of limitations run out and not pay anything ever back if your financial position isn't going to change. But this isn't for everybody. Because I've seen people go on and saying, hey, I'm not going to increase my income and stuff. And then all of a sudden an opportunity comes up, or they take a job that's making really good money and they see a lot of this money going to the IRS to pay the tax debt at that point. But it did run the statute of limitations for a while, and maybe some of the debt will fall off. And we've used it that way as well. But what might be a better option could be the offer in compromise. The be-all, end-all, holy grail, as you may hear on the radio. OIC is out there offering compromise. We're going to settle this for debt for less than what you owe, and it prevents you from paying the full tax liability. And you can actually go online and use the IRS tool to see if you're going to qualify. So if you don't trust anybody, you can go in and do the pre-qualifier. But first thing I'm going to tell you is if you call us, be completely honest about your situation. Be completely honest about what you own, property, values of it, equity in it, because all that comes into play. So financially, money-wise, you may not be able to make a payment because of your mortgage and your debts and car payments and family, food, housing, clothing, electrical, you name it, medical payments. All these things could make it to where you can't afford to pay. But then all of a sudden, here's the kicker. You have a lot of equity in your house, and the IRS is going to want that. But yet you don't have the wherewithal to borrow that money. Maybe we can prove you can't get it, but the IRS is going to be looking for that. So, yes, if you check all the boxes that I have low income, my expenses are too high, but not so much higher over national standards that the IRS could determine you can pay, because the IRS doesn't use what you are paying out. Yes, they will use your car payment up to the national standard. They will use your mortgage payment, electrical, gas, utilities, property taxes, insurance on your home up to the national standard for your area. Yes, food, clothing, these things also will be taken into account, but not up to what you spend if you exceed the national standards, only up to the national standards. If you're below the national standards on any of this, they're going to take actual. So if you only own one car, husband and wife, they're only going to take the one car payment. The other person may get money towards public transportation, or maybe you own two cars, but one only has a car payment. Only that one car payment is going to be applied. So, you've got to look at it. Maybe you do qualify based on your actual, but you don't qualify based on national standards. Complex tax questions, complex tax issues. You need somebody that knows what they're doing, how to help you qualify, or how to make things work within your life to qualify. Once you do determine you do qualify and you file the 433A, possibly B, and the 656 for the offer and compromise, you submit it to the IRS with payments, and you wait and wait and wait. Now, they tell you you've got to be up to date on your estimated tax payments. You've got to be in compliance, because if not, it's going to be kicked out right back to you, and they're going to decline the offer. And you will technically have withdrawn the offer at that point because of you not being in compliance. If you don't have tax returns filed, or you're behind on other taxes, or the form's not filled out correctly, the IRS will kick those all back to you as if they weren't filed. They're not going to send you the money back. They're keeping that, but they're going to send you the forms back and say it's been withdrawn. So you want to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. So the offer and compromise with the IRS also comes with a 5-year compliance. That's right. After they accept. Now, you got to be in compliance from the day you file to the day they accept. And then for the next 5 years after that, where this debt comes flowing back right to you, penalties and interest all occurring during this whole time. You doubt me on that? Ask the IRS. Doubt me on that? Ask a client who came to me a few years ago. And the first thing he came to me and said, "Hey, I screwed up." I said, "Well, what did you do?" "Well, I filed late." "Okay, that's no big deal. Well, I owed money. Okay, no big deal. They're just going to hit you with a little bit of penalties. I was in the middle of an offering compromise. Okay, how far into the middle of this offering compromise? Well, I was into the last 6 months, meaning he was in compliance for 4 years, 6 months into it, 6 months before it would have been finalized and done and gone away, and all $250,000 plus penalties and interest that accrued over the time came flooding back to him. Now you say, hey, that's no big deal. He qualified for an offering compromise once. He can qualify possibly again. And we can start this whole thing all over again. Unfortunately, this gentleman found a way, got a great job. He was making good six-figure income. Therefore, he could afford to pay this tax debt back. And he accumulated other assets along the way. See, the IRS doesn't care once it accepts the offering and compromise. You can go gangbusters and make as much money as you want once it's accepted. And they're not going to go back and look at that. But they expect you to stay 100% in compliance. This gentleman fell out of compliance. He got all the debt coming back. That's one of the negatives in an offering compromise. You want somebody to monitor the situation. You want to make sure you're working with somebody to make sure your returns are filed every time timely. You want to make sure you're making your estimated tax payments and dotting your I's and crossing your T's. That being the case, this gentleman didn't do that, and he ended up back with all the debt. So you kind of got to watch this. What's the other option? Partial pay installment agreement. See, partial pay installment agreement has a little less lines to this and contingencies to it. Yes, you got to still stay in compliance and not owe any more tax and pay your estimated taxes and stuff like that. But the IRS agrees on a smaller payment over the statute of limitations time, and debt can fall off. So we structured a client's tax debt. They were well over $150,000 in debt. We did our complete tax analysis and found out that, hey, over the next 3 years, they're going to have a significant portion of their debt fall away. So they're going to lose 20 or 30,000 of the debt will fall off at the end of this year, early next year. And then mid-year next year, they have another 30 or 40,000 falling off. And then sometime the year after, they're going to have a bunch of debt fall off. So we were able to structure that bit larger tax debt into small payments that they could actually afford right now in compliance with the IRS and let this debt fall off as we go. Their savings was still very good and great for them in their life. And it was a payment they could afford to make. They were paying $100 a month on this tax debt. So yes, over a year, they're going to pay $1,200, over 2 years, $2,400. But the $2,400 was going to allow close to $75,000 to $80,000 fall off right there in 2 years, with other big chunks falling off in the next year or two as well. So it became a very good option for them so that they could see that what we put into place dropped their debt down to something they could afford and would not be detrimental to them. So there's options out there. You got to consider your options. The first thing that I would do if I owe money to the IRS is give Taxation Solutions Tax Relief a call today, 888-930-1016. Again, 888-930-1016. Hey, I had fun today. I know I was on my soapbox in the whole first segment, but we got to talk about how tax code started, which is really kind of cool and a little bit of history. Tune in right here in Tax Talk for You. You can go to taxtalk4u.com. Again, taxtalk4u.com follow us over there. Never miss an episode. You can follow us on Facebook, whether you follow us through Trucker Tax Tools. You can go to truckertaxtools.com or Trucker Tax Tools Facebook page, or you can go to Taxation Solutions Facebook page. You can follow us there on Instagram. But be here every Monday at 10 a.m. on W4CY Radio. Be here at taxtalk4u.com. And if you do miss an episode, you can go to all the different podcast sites and find us right there. Just type in taxtalk4u.com and you'll be able to find us. Hey, be here Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, W4CY Radio. Thank you very much. Have a God bless, glorious, and awesome week. Make this week special. Do something fun for you, your kids, your spouse. Do that, but be here Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time at taxtalk4u.com. Thank you. God bless.
Are you an individual or business that wants to understand taxes and how they affect you? Are you looking for specific tax advice for self-employed, business owners, and truckers? Are you behind on taxes and your bookkeeping? Are you dealing with the IRS and ready to have some relief? Then you need Tax Talk for You, hosted by tax and trucker expert Barry G. Fowler, EA. Tune in 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Monday right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Don't forget to check this and past episodes at taxtalk4u.com. See you next week at W4CY.com.